Wisconsin Foodie would like to thank the following underwriters.
This morning we're headed out first to go feed the chicks and check them, and we've got cows to move, yearlings and steers to move, pigs to feed. Just a normal day on the farm.
Michael and I, we do most of the management of the farm. We do the chores, daily chores, but Michael's parents help, his brother helps, so we said we're 3 generations live and work on the farm, and so everybody kind of has their role here. This year we're doing 3 batches of pasture-raised organic chicken that we have in our mobile greenhouse, so those get moved every day. As they get a little bit bigger, it'll be twice a day onto fresh pasture. And then we also do some egg layers, so we have some eggs as well.
We do heritage breed pasture-raised pork that we direct market, and as well as we have grass-fed organic beef. So we're managed rotational grazing. We're moving every single day to fresh pasture for optimal growth and pasture development. On our farm, we let a pig be a pig, you know, out on pasture. They get to play in the mud and they get to eat fresh grass and obviously get some grain. We grind on farm. We grow all of our own corn and buy local organic soybeans and raise our own oats as well. The quality of the meat is exceptional. I mean, we've been so trained to think of pork as the other white meat, and it's contrary. We've also been trained to think that pork should be really lean, but that's not the case. I mean, with raising pigs out on pasture and heritage breed pigs, they should have a nice set of fat on them, and when you give them pasture and access to outdoors like this, they tend to have a nice deep red color of meat that's really full of flavor.
It really makes a big difference them being raised outside and getting a lot of exercise, and it really does change the flavor and the taste a lot.
We want to leave something for our kids to farm. We want to leave it better than what we found, what we started with. And also I believe a lot of our farming practices, you know, can be used as a model to raise food, like our grazing practices and our cattle. There's a statistic out there, if everybody adapted, or if all the beef in the United States was raised with rotational grazing, grass-fed practices, we could sequester the amount of carbon that's been emitted in just 10 years that's been emitted since the industrial era. So it's all about getting the carbon in the soil and feeding the soil and raising good meat.
Basically trying to be good stewards of the land. We kind of expanded on what his parents started with, which was they really were into the organic grass-fed aspect of it, and so we've just sort of built it from there.
My biggest thing is know your farmer. I mean, how do you want your food to be raised? How do you know, that's something that we should have a connection with.
One of the beautiful pieces about having the ability to interview farmers are stories of generations, and I think that that's what makes the Midwest farming culture so strong and prevalent. Michael, this land has been in your family for a long time. How long have you been farming here?
Since 1872, so it's 7 generations with me and my wife, Chloe. It was a dairy farm predominantly up until the 2000s, until we converted it to grass-fed, all pasture-based, diverse livestock farm.
Can you give me an overview of everything that's happening here? I mean, there's a lot to take in, and obviously it's so picturesque and beautiful that you know, you can get caught on any one facet. What do I see? What am I looking at?
We have grass-fed organic beef that we rotate every day onto new pasture. We have heritage breed pigs that are organic and pasture raised. And then we have chicken that's also pasture raised that we rotationally graze.
We're really focused on quality all the way through life, from birth to finish. And we're farrow to finish as well on the hogs.
How much of this is about like the ethos of eating well and wanting to understand where your food comes from? And how much is it like about flavor? Do you get feedback from your customers that this food tastes different?
I think a lot of people come because they just like the story, they see us on social media, they like the cute pictures, and then they taste our stuff and they're like, I can't go back to stuff in the grocery store. That stuff tastes like nothing. So definitely a big difference, and we get that a lot from customers.
Sure.
This is Pig Palace.
Pig Palace, I
Yeah.
like it.
We're weaning and fence training the piglets right now, and starting them on way from uplands.
Sure.
Bus! Bus!
How long did it take you to perfect your cow call?
About 5 years.
About 5 years.
Still in training.
Nice.
Bus!
Are these cows ready to be moved?
They are.
How much of your job in your day is actually just spent with the animals and, you know, making sure fencing's done? Or do you find yourself, because you do have a farm store, spending a lot of time inside with customer interactions?
Thankfully, my parents take care of most of the customer interactions, so it frees me up to manage all this stuff. And it takes up quite a bit of my time to manage all the cattle, rotate them in every day.
Sure.
So if you want to grab that post,
Yeah.
and we'll pull it all the way up. Buzzies!
This way, friends. No crowding. There's room enough for all of us.
So on our farm, it's really using nature as a model. We're doing a lot of biomimicry. We're treating the animals as how they would intended to be treated in nature. We started with 14 Murray Grey cows, and just started as something like we'll just grow beef for ourselves and for our friends. And the same thing with the pigs. Started with 2 to 3, and now we're processing up to 150 pigs a year, and we have 175 head of Murray Grey beef cattle where we calf to finish everything.
Do you ever get questions from your customers, or when they come and buy, like say they buy a quarter of an animal, how do I actually prepare this? I mean, is that how far the disconnect has gone, where people don't know what to do?
In grass-fed beef, there's such a fine line there. It takes a really attention to detail to
Sure.
cook. You can overcook it like that.
So we sell everything in our store, retail. We sell some to restaurants, wholesale.
This is what food sovereignty looks like, doesn't it?
Yeah, so this is our meat freezer. It's where we retail all of our cuts. We have beef, pork, and chicken, pretty much any cut you can think of. If we don't have it, we can order it next time we process something. So
This is more diverse than most farm stores get. I want to do some steaks because I want to show people how to not overcook grass-fed beef.
Okay.
And I want some of that fat on there.
Yeah.
Can you hook me up?
Yeah,
All right.
definitely. Got some New York strips there.
Sure.
There's a little bit of marbling, maybe a little bit less than you would see in the grocery store because we don't feed any corn to fatten them.
I think one of the ways that I really appreciate a New York strip, specifically with those grass-fed notes, is à poivre, which means in crushed peppercorns. And the reason for that is some of the notes of grass that come through the beef and the beef fat really combine with some of the floral elements that you'll find in peppercorns. Chloe, it's been amazing. Thank you for walking us through the farm store. Thank you for allowing us on the farm. I can't wait to get this out of here because I've got some ideas what to do with this, and I'm hungry. So
thanks for coming out. This is great.
Awesome. It's our pleasure. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
So now I'm going to bring you into actually the fold of my home kitchen. And the reason that I want to do this inside my house is because I really want to be able to showcase this amazing piece of beef. This beef from 7 Seeds, this is a pretty remarkable piece of grass-fed beef. So one of the things that I notice about this beef is that it's nicely studded with fat. And that's kind of unusual for a grass-fed product. Most of the time, grass-fed gets a bad rap for being really, really lean. And if you have a tendency to overcook it, it becomes dry and unpalatable. But in this piece, you can see the fat striations through this whole New York strip. You can also see this colored fat on the outside. Now, normally when you would pick up a steak that's been finished in a conventional fashion, you might see more white through here. But this presence of orange shows that there's a lot of beta carotene in this. That means that this animal was eating grass for its entire life. This is really, really fantastic stuff, and the health benefits for grass-fed beef are unparalleled. But today, I thought we'd do a really simple preparation. Steak à poivre. Basically, what à poivre in French stands for is a peppercorn, of pepper. So we have a combination of pink peppercorn, white peppercorn, and telecherry peppercorn that we're gonna put in a spice grinder and pulverize to different textures. And the idea is that we're gonna really crust the outside of that steak. We're going to heat up a cast iron skillet, and with that cast iron, we can have uniform heat that will sear the outside of the steak beautifully, but it will also hold heat. The idea is that we wanna sear this thing, cook it to a rare, maybe medium rare at most, remove it and let it rest, and then accent it with the rest of the dish. Today, because I'm feeling festive, I want to use some local lacinato kale, a little bit of onion grown by my neighbor in her garden, some lemon, some shiitake mushrooms that are locally grown, and then I want to complement that with Upland's Rush Creek and a little bit of barred bread. Some of the stuff that you can find in the local supermarkets. And the idea is to make this more accessible to you. One of the first things that I want to do for a piece of meat like this New York strip, is I want to make sure that I get that salt crust just right. So I'm going to take my sea salt and apply it to the outside. I do this before I do the pepper, so that way I can ensure that that salt actually sticks and binds to that protein, which in the end will help that pepper also adhere to the protein. Here we go. So this may look like a lot of salt to folks, but I promise, this is a pretty chunky piece of beef. And we wanna make sure that that crust on the outside has enough salt to flavor the entire piece. So I liberally season it. Next, I have my peppercorns. Now, for those of you who don't have one of these at home, I picked this bad boy up at a St. Vinny's or Salvation Army or any place you can find used housewares. Literally, it's a coffee grinder. I keep one for coffee in our house and one for spices. In this instance, because I want a variation of pepper, I'm gonna put my first batch in, and this will be the fine ground. At this juncture, I'm gonna take this fine ground pepper and I'm gonna put it back on the plate. Because again, we wanna create a crust. Now we can see in here that there's some peppercorns that haven't broken down, and that's just fine. Because quite frankly, we want consistency on the outside of this piece of beef. In this grinder, I have telecherry peppercorn, which is actually just a fancy name for black peppercorn. The floral nature of peppercorns, the little bit of heat, and then the sweetness that accompanies them really accent this piece of beef. And so I want to create a nice spot to be able to take this piece of beef that I've seasoned and drop it in there. Now we can see this is pepper crusted through and through. And one of the reasons we do this is to give this piece of beef a really nice shell on the outside while keeping it really, really delicious and soft and luscious and sweet on the inside. Next, I'm going to heat my skillet. So to start the process, we're letting the pan heat up, and we want this thing to be pretty hot. The reason being, we want to get that moisture seared on the inside. I put a liberal amount of oil in there, and the reason being is I want to make sure that there's enough liaison to transfer that heat from the pan to the actual piece of beef. With a pan like this, I want to give it a little bit of time to heat up before I put the oil in. Right away, I can smell these peppercorns searing. It smells floral. It smells beautiful, actually. So we gave that beef a flip, and what we have to do now is literally just be patient. Booyah. So now that I can see that this bottom side is seared, and we have a really lovely crust, I'm gonna take this piece of beef and put it in the oven. I have the oven set for about 350 degrees, which is kind of like the universal temperature for getting things controlled. What we want to do is we want that beef just to have the ability to continue to cook a little bit on the inside. That seared crust will be nice and delicious on the outside. We just want to bring that temperature evenly through the piece of beef. So we're going to give it about 5 minutes in the oven. In the meantime, I can start to prepare some of the pieces that I'm going to need to accompany the dish. All right, what we want to do now is we want to prepare the base for our kale and the mushrooms. And this is really, really dead simple. I'm gonna take just a little bit of onion here. This was grown by a neighbor, and in true Wisconsin fashion, at the end of her garden season, she provided me with a giant bag to hopefully last me through part of the winter. I think it's always best when you can use garden fresh ingredients, and anything you know the story of makes it that much better when you serve it at the table. So to Joe, thank you so much. I really appreciate these. I'm gonna cut the ends off, and I really just want to come down through the onion and get relatively uniform pieces. As far as the shiitake mushrooms are concerned, I literally just want to pick these bad boys up, take the stem off, and keep them torn. I really enjoy the woody, kind of earthy flavor that mushrooms bring to a dish like this. I'm gonna let this rest on my cutting board for about 5 minutes in order to really, really get those juices to resettle into the piece of beef. But before we do that, I'm gonna put a really healthy pat of the Nordic Creamery butter right on top. Just let it kind of rest in there. So that really gets a lot of richness, but it's also gonna act as a really, really delicious and delicate sauce. With the same pan over medium heat, I'm gonna actually take these mushrooms and onions, and I'm gonna place them right in the skillet. At this point, while I still have a lot of really good heat intensity in this pan, I'm gonna simply take a lemon and slice it in half. The idea with the lemon is that if we put it in a pan like this face down, these sides will caramelize, and that'll allow that juice and all that citrus in there to really, really concentrate and become more sugary. And last, but certainly not least, are the vegetables. You can never have too many vegetables on a plate like this. And I love lacinato kale. Lacinato is also known as dinosaur kale because of the scaly texture of the leaves, but I love it. This is so rich in iron and all sorts of minerals that you pull from this vegetable that it can't be underestimated. The other thing that I like about it, for all the people who cook at home, it's kind of bulletproof. You can put this in a hot, hot skillet, you can throw it in the grill, you can do all sorts of stuff, and with enough salt and lemon, I promise, you won't even know it's kale. We're gonna allow this to just chill out in the pan. One of the reasons I like to really slice the steak before I serve it is because I wanna see it. I wanna see how close to that perfect temperature I got when I cooked it. That looks pretty good, doesn't it? And last but not least, let's lay this beautiful grass-fed beef, lovingly and humanely raised by 7 Seeds Organics, right on top of this. We can see the butter kind of melted on there, really works into the beef. And I think the real crowning moment of this is squeezing a little bit of that caramelized lemon juice right over the top. This is ready to go. For anyone who might have apprehension about searing a piece of beef at home, don't. It's a really simple, delicious way to use the bounty of what's around you and put it on a plate. And honestly, I can't wait any longer. I've got to try a little bit of this for myself because this is almost too good to be true. That was really good. You get a little bit of pepper, right? You get the peppery bite. You get the acidity of the lemon, which accentuates the pepper. But then you get that sweet richness of that beef that's really balanced by the mushrooms and the umami and the kale. And it's just this medley of flavors that's in one little bite. Michael and Chloe and everyone in the 7 generations of farmers that comprise 7 Seeds Organics, thank you. This is beautiful. Bon appetit!
You ever run out of gas out here? How does that feel?
Chloe, can you come pick me up? I feel like that's half the time is me bugging her to do more work.
Do a figure 8, come back. Take my shirt off for this next scene. Conan the Barbarian bit for you, Arthur. This is the time when we pour the water to the pasture.
Arthur's had it with you.
Oh.
Wisconsin Foodie would like to thank the following underwriters.
The dairy farmers of Wisconsin are proud to underwrite Wisconsin Foodie and remind you that in Wisconsin, we dream in cheese. Just look for our badge. It's on everything we make.
At Organic Valley, our cows make milk with just a few simple ingredients: sun, soil, rain, and grass, and grass, and grass. Yeehaw! Organic Valley grass milk. Organic milk from 100% grass-fed cows.
Employee-owned New Glarus Brewing Company has been brewing and bottling beer for their friends only in Wisconsin since 1993. Just a short drive from Madison, come visit Swissconsin and see where your beer's made.
Wisconsin's great outdoors has something for everyone. Come for the adventure, stay for the memories. Go wild in Wisconsin. To build your adventure, visit dnr.wi.gov.
From production to processing, right down to our plates, there are over 15,000 employers in Wisconsin with career opportunities to fulfill your dreams and feed the world. Hungry for more? Shape your career with these companies and others at fabwisconsin.com. With additional support coming from The Conscious Carnivore. From local animal sourcing to on-site, high-quality butchering and packaging, The Conscious Carnivore can ensure organically raised, grass-fed, and healthy meats through its small group of local farmers. The Conscious Carnivore. Know your farmer, love your butcher. Additional support coming from the Viroqua Food Co-op, Central Wisconsin Craft Collective, Something Special from Wisconsin, Crossroads Collective, the La Crosse Distilling Company, as well as the Friends of PBS Wisconsin.